if I were to be looking for a criminal defense attorney, what are some of the key components that I really want besides that honesty and integrity? Like if I were to come in and I'm interviewing, what are the top two or three things that I need to keep in mind in order to choose someone that's going to represent my interests best?
Well, boy, another great question.
Thank you.
I think that one comment that comes to mind is that lawyers are a bunch of status seekers. Not all of them, but as a group, they are. Lawyers are very caught up in where did you go to school, what was your class rank.
What do you drive?
Yeah, 30 years later, after all this water has gone under the bridge, lawyers are, so many of them are interested in, what was the status of the law school they attended, what was their class rank. But I think what really helps lawyers succeed in the practice of law, like many other professions, many other industries, is having common sense and people skills. I would tell people who are looking for a lawyer to pay attention to their own feelings, to listen to themselves, and ask themselves, who makes you feel comfortable? Okay, who are you comfortable with? Who do you feel like you can trust to be straight with you? That's really important. Obviously, it would be great to get a referral from somebody who's used that lawyer's services, if you know someone, or if there are problems with lawyers just giving names of former clients out. There's a confidentiality issue there, so that's a little tricky, a little complicated. But I would say ask the lawyer how long they've been doing those kind of cases. Ask the lawyer, ask the lawyer why they would recommend themselves as opposed to some non-specific other individual competitor.
That's a good idea. So the interview question would be, Steve, this is the trouble that I'm having. This is the help that I'm looking for. Why are you the best in the business at it?
Yeah. Or, if not the best, why should I hire you? What's the benefit of hiring you versus, a randomly selected person of similar background? What do I get for choosing you?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't hold myself out as being, singularly unique. That's pretentious and dishonest. I mean, there's a lot of very capable people in the legal profession, and some that are less than capable. But having said that, I think the way that I would answer that question, one way that I would answer that question, I think, is that I would assure the client that they can trust that I'll always be really straight with them. I'll always tell them what I feel they need to know, that I won't hold back if I have advice for them, if I have a take on something or opinion about something that affects them. I'm going to tell them about it. I'm going to tell them straight. I'm going to do that in a respectful way, and then let them make their decision. But I'm not going to let them make a decision without the benefit of my advice, because I'm concerned that I may lose their business.
And that's the rub. That's the real rub. If you're hiring a real estate agent, or I'm a real estate agent, so what you're saying really applies to me.
Yeah.
An attorney, I lose business because I say, I know that other person told you could sell your home for $1 million, but it's only worth $750,000. That's what it's really worth. It's hard to do that because I know I'm going to lose the business. It's hard to be that person, but I always benefit in asking in that regard. And I'm not trying to turn this towards me, but I've never really done the comparison with an attorney saying, well, here's how this is my opinion of how this is going to go down, and then you get a second opinion from an attorney, and they're like, oh no, I'm going to get you off 100%. It would be hard not to buy into the bullshit. Is what I'm saying. I want to get off. I don't want to go to jail for my bad day, and so that's a tricky. It would be a tricky thing to choose an attorney that's got your best interest in mind.
But at the end of the day, when you don't get $1 million or you don't get off.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can imagine what the situation would be like. A client believing they could win at trial, who proceeds to trial, and then they're convicted at trial, especially convicted of serious crime or crimes, and what they really needed is the right advisor to talk them out of that strategy, and they didn't have it. You know, in the end, although it's the client's prerogative to choose the objective, if they end up in a worse place, a far worse place, because they didn't get the right advice, of course, that's the lawyer's failing. It's the client's failing if they didn't listen to good advice. But to not receive it, that would be, one of the worst scenarios I can imagine.
So that seems to me almost like a malpractice. Can't think of a better word, but a malpractice in a doctor's case for him misdiagnosing or whatever. Is there any? Do you hold any liability looking backwards on poor advice?
Oh, certainly, and certainly one of the licensing issues, and there is an organization called the Utah State Bar. It is a state agency. It licenses lawyers. It monitors the conduct of lawyers. But in the canon of professional ethics for lawyers, one of those ethical duties is to provide competent representation. So aside from having a license, merely having the license to practice law, okay, that's a licensing issue, but there is a separate competency issue. Because you have a license doesn't necessarily mean that you're competent to provide a certain service. That's a separate thing, and a lawyer who does not provide competent services is subject to discipline, potentially.
With that, with that licensing board, is there a certain number of continuing education hours that you need to get annually?
Yes, right now the requirement is that licensed lawyers, to maintain their license, complete 12 continuing education hours per year.
And are there mandatory hours associated, like ethics is a part of, like that you have to do it every 4 years or something like that?
Yeah, so every year, I think the requirement is right now that the 12 hours that you need to complete and document every year, that one of those hours has to be in ethics, and I think one of them has to be in what they call professionalism and civility. So there's one of the downsides of being a member of the legal profession is, there's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of friction. There are rules that govern lawyers just simply being professional, being courteous and decent to each other in a situation that's, high conflict, emotionally charged. A lot of, bad behavior can still be curtailed, at least hopefully.
And that would be managed by the licensing, the bar, the Utah State Bar. They're the ones that manage it, and they have they would probably have a committee for complaints and all of those things where they're managing that on the regular, like keeping an eye on their industry.
That's correct. I'm certainly not an expert on like the procedural aspect of disciplinary actions, because I've never had one.
Congratulations.
I don't want to overshare.
It's the goal.
Knock on
but
wood.
You never have one.
I don't want to overshare, but I've had situations where somebody complained to the bar, and the bar made me respond, but I've never gone down the road of actually being in disciplinary action.
Gotcha.
All the complaints I've ever been involved in were terminated at that level, just the inquiry or investigation level. But yes, for somebody who has a concern that their lawyer has engaged in unethical conduct as it affects them, that is the forum to begin a grievance process, is the Utah State Bar.
Well, that's probably a really important point to touch on real fast. If you've been practicing law for 20 years, 20 plus years, you're going to have, somebody's going to complain to the bar. Not everybody is happy, it's just inevitable to have happen. I don't think that you should dock somebody, if you haven't had a bar complaint once or twice, you haven't been practicing enough, you haven't tried enough cases. But for you to say that, where there hasn't been any disciplinary, anybody can make a complaint to the bar, they will investigate it, and yours have all been cut off right at the jump street of that initial inquiry.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that public record? Like, if somebody was going to choose a lawyer, can they research if they have had
Complaints.
complaints at the bar?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that information is publicly available.
Okay.